The summer in Devonshire had arrived like any other, yet none could have guessed it would alter Emily's life forever. Her mother's husband, David, was not her biological father, but for nearly 2 years, he had been woven into the fabric of their small family. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered with a solemn demeanor, and those large, weathered hands of his always seemed to know exactly what to do, whether he was fixing the ancient cider press in the orchard or tuning the old guitar for their evening folk sessions. They lived on a centuries-old manor house nestled just outside the sleepy market town of Ashburton, a place steeped in history and whispered secrets carried on the breeze through the towering oaks. Emily remembered that Thursday as if it were carved in stone. The July sun beat relentlessly over the rolling fields, and the air buzzed with the droning song of cicadas. Her mother, Margaret, was at the Ashburton market as usual, selling her carefully embroidered Devonshire linens and homemade elderflower jams. David, she believed, had gone to oversee the apple harvest up in the orchard's higher reaches. Emily, a 17-year-old with a mind prone to flights of fancy, had retreated to her room seeking refuge from the stifling heat. Her bedroom was her sanctuary. Cool stone walls, a window that overlooked the wild garden where wild roses tangled in disarray. She lay stretched across her iron-framed bed, the linen curtains half-drawn, immersed in a solitary pleasure few admitted to but many understood. Thoughts of Jamie, the shy baker's boy from town with his crooked smile and eyes as dark as storm clouds, fluttered through her mind like moths around a candle. A gentle breeze slipped through the open window, caressing her bare arms, and the soft cotton sheets, hand-woven by her grandmother, felt like a whisper against her skin, blurring the line between dreams and reality. Her hands moved rhythmically, a silent dance to the music of her imagination. Suddenly, a creak echoed from the hallway's wooden floor. Emily froze, instinctively pulling the sheets over herself, but it was too late. The door was ajar, and there he stood, David. His dark eyes, sometimes fathomless, locked onto hers with an intensity that made her feel as fragile as a songbird caught in a spider's web. A flush rose to her cheeks, burning her skin. She hid beneath the sheets, wishing the floor would swallow her whole. "Sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. David said nothing. He closed the door with a soft thud and left. Emily told herself she would forget it by morning, that this would be just one of those awkward moments life throws at you and then buries deep. But David never forgot anything. And as days passed, the feeling of being watched, of his gaze lingering on her, became strangely intoxicating. At first, the memory came with paralyzing embarrassment, but gradually, that shame morphed into curiosity, then something bordering on amusement, even addiction at it started subtly. Longer glances across the dinner table, an accidental brush of his fingers passing the salt, a closeness that hadn't been there before. One afternoon, just after stepping out of the shower wrapped in a turquoise towel, she found him waiting in the hallway beside the old mahogany sideboard where her mother kept family heirlooms. His expression was unreadable. Was it reproach, longing, or both? Her damp curls dripped onto her bare shoulders, leaving a faint trail on the polished oak floor as she moved toward her room, heart pounding like a war drum. David followed. Her legs trembled, waiting for him to cross the threshold. But he didn't. He passed by as if on his way to the study. Relief flooded her, but with it came a sting of disappointment. Later, while her mother was in Exeter shopping for the village fete, David sat beside her on the worn leather sofa, the late afternoon light casting golden hues on the cream-colored walls. Emily was reading a collection of poetry by Ted Hughes, the room filled with the subtle scent of lavender incense her mother always burned. "We should talk about what happened," he said, his voice low and steady, tingling her skin. There was no anger in his tone, only an invitation, a curious wonder. "Have you ever felt something forbidden that made you lose your breath?" he asked, gently tucking a stray lock of her hair behind her ear. Inside her, a volcano erupted. Her hands trembled, clutching the book. Her throat tightened. She was speechless. He suggested they move somewhere more private. With shaking legs, she followed him to the study, a small room at the back of the house she rarely entered. It smelled of cedarwood, old books, and that unmistakable scent of his cologne. vulgari man, that was oddly masculine yet intoxicating. When the door clicked shut behind them, Emily knew nothing would ever be the same. "There's no need to be ashamed," David said, stepping closer, his tall frame casting a shadow over hers. "But there are better ways to do this. Let me show you, darling." His voice was soft, almost a whisper, but it reverberated through her entire being. David wasn't a man of many words, but when he spoke, every syllable carried weight. First came the theoretical lesson, as he called it, though to Emily each word sparked a fire she hadn't known smoldered inside her. He spoke of patience, connection with one's own body, breathing. His eyes locked with hers, radiating calm that contrasted with the storm inside her. The afternoon light filtered through the study's window, painting the room in hues of orange and violet, mingling with the copal incense David burned for meditation. Then came the practical part. His hands, once rough and calloused from orchard work, were now surprisingly gentle. He started with a slow, deliberate motion, teaching her rhythm, pressure, and little tricks she'd never imagined. It was a silent dance between her senses and his guidance. Emily felt like a devoted student, eager to absorb every nuance. She repeated his movements over and over, imprinting them in her mind. The thin fabric of her white linen blouse, nearly translucent in the dim light, seemed to join the dance, yearning to learn. That afternoon, they crossed a line. It was intense, wild, unforgettable. As the lesson ended and her senses teetered on the edge of ecstasy, he whispered against her neck, warm breath sending shivers down her spine. "Slow down, enjoy the journey." His words etched themselves into her like a mantra. Their lessons grew more frequent, more intense. No longer was it just David teaching. Emily now showed him how well she'd learned, how deeply she'd absorbed his teachings. Every corner of the manor, every shadow, every whisper of the wind became an excuse for their clandestine sessions. The old library, with its dusty shelves and musty pages, became one of their favorite places. The fear of Margaret walking in, shattering their bubble, only made it more thrilling, more forbidden, more desirable. One day, when her mother had gone to visit an aunt in Plymouth, the manor was wrapped in a near-funereal silence. Emily wore a simple cotton dress embroidered with bluebells, her hair loose, cascading down her back. She was in the kitchen preparing a cool rhubarb cordial when she sensed his presence behind her. He said nothing, just the nearness was enough. His warm hands settled on her shoulders, and her breath hitched. He gently guided her to the oak table bathed in midday sunlight. That day's lesson was about skin sensitivity, how every nerve reacts to touch, to a caress. His fingers brushed her arms, neck, hands, awakening sensations she'd never felt. The rhubarb cordial on the windowsill seemed to vibrate with the same intensity as her body. Their lessons extended to life's smallest details. David had a particular fascination with feet. He said they were the map of the soul, where all tension and energy concentrated. After long days, he often asked for a foot massage, and in those moments, the lesson became an exchange that he taught her how to release tension and apply just the right pressure while her hands explored every curve and muscle. She, in turn, learned to savor the texture of his sun-worn skin and the strength in his fingers. Sometimes, he offered the massages, and the touch of his thumbs along her arches, the soft pressure on her ankles, sent her into a deep, hypnotic relaxation that it was a fetish that grew naturally between them. A silent language of connection. Until the day David looked into those familiar dark eyes and said with a mix of pride and melancholy, "I think I have nothing more to teach you." But he was wrong. She needed him more than ever. He had become an addiction, a necessity beyond lessons, a connection that defined her. David was mistaken to think he'd taught her all there was. Every day, her need for him deepened, rooted itself in her soul. It was a craving that consumed her. A constant longing for his nearness, his hands, the way his dark eyes revealed secrets even she didn't know. The manor, once a place of peace and routine, had become the stage for their secret dance. Every shadow, every nook was a conspirator in their forbidden lessons. One night, under the silver moon rising above the Dartmoor hills, with only the cricket song breaking the silence, they met in the kitchen. Darkness enveloped everything. The faint moonlight filtering through the wooden window bars was their only illumination. No sound disturbed the night outside. Just the two of them in a world apart, hidden in the shadows. Emily believed no one would find them. Margaret's deep sleep, a blessing after long days of work, and her soft snoring were their lullaby. Time seemed to freeze around them. For a moment, they were rulers of a silent universe. Beyond the reach of the outside world's rules, her hands trembled. Not from fear, but from the tension of the forbidden, the inevitable desire she could not resist. She wore a light cotton nightgown, barely more than a caress on her skin, vanilla shampoo scent mingling with his cologne. David began to teach her things she'd never seen before, lessons beyond the physical, touching the soul. They moved in unison, slowly, each touch a revelation. His lips pressed softly against hers, tender yet overwhelming, a prelude to deeper intimacy. His large, steady hands moved with hypnotic rhythm. Suddenly, fate mocked their boldness. The unmistakable creak of the front door swinging open shattered their moment. In a blink, the fragile castle they'd built in the dark crumbled like a house of cards in a gust, and there, in the doorway, stood Margaret. Her silhouette, cut sharp against the moonlight, was a figure of disbelief, pain, and fury. Her eyes, once warm and loving, now blazed with an indescribable mix of emotions. Her face grew pale, breath erratic, as if the air had been wrenched from her lungs. The silence between the three was suffocating, so thick it stifled every sound, every breath. David, who moments earlier had silenced Emily's mouth during their lesson, was frozen, his hand still near her lips. Emily's eyes were wide, pulse pounding in her temples. Margaret said nothing. Her gaze spoke volumes, a truth they desperately tried to hide, but now could no longer deny. She had seen. Their family stood on the brink of ruin. The structure they believed solid had collapsed, reduced to rubble. Margaret no longer spoke to Emily. Her presence was distant and cold, as if Emily herself were a stranger she could no longer bear to face. Guilt gnawed at Emily like a beast devouring her from within, and she had no idea how to face her mother or mend the irreparable. The weight of Margaret's pain was unbearable, but so was the growing distance between them. Each day, Emily felt her world shrink, darken, as if swallowed by a dense fog. Every moment she sought a way to fix things. She realized there was no easy answer, no shortcut, no magic pill. The pieces lay shattered, broken, and she didn't know if the mosaic of their family could ever be pieced back together. Have you ever felt your own desires drag you to a place you cannot escape? Emily never imagined something so intense, so vital in her mind, could lead her to such devastation. Now she was trapped in a spiral of guilt and anguish, unsure if light would ever return to her path. Was it possible to overcome this? Could she ever regain the trust lost, her mother's love? Or, as she feared in her darkest nights, were they doomed to live under the shadow of the irreparable, burdened by their mistakes forever? She didn't know what to do. Sometimes, she felt it wasn't just guilt suffocating her, but the relentless pressure of being someone she was not, dragged into something she should never have allowed. The next morning dawned tortuously slow, carrying the weight of the previous night. Sunlight, which usually flooded the manor with life, now felt invasive, exposing the chasm between them. Margaret moved through the house like a ghost. Her silence was louder than any scream. Her eyes, once warm, now pierced Emily with a coldness that crushed her soul. David was gone. His truck was absent from the yard, his workshop silent and locked. Emily tried to reach her mother in the kitchen as she made coffee. The comforting aroma of roasted beans now tasted bitter. "Mom," she whispered, voice fragile. Margaret ignored her, hands busy with dishes, as if Emily were air. The clinking of clay mugs on the table was the only sound daring to break the tension. Emily wanted to touch her, to beg her to speak, but something in Margaret's stiff posture stopped her. She knew she'd crossed a line, betrayed not only trust but something deeper, sacred. Days turned to weeks. The manor, once bustling, became a mausoleum of silence and sidelong glances. Margaret spoke only when necessary, each word a stab. Emily sought refuge in her room or wandered the orchard paths, seeking solace in the vast, wild landscape. The sharp leaves seemed to whisper her name, reminding her of her guilt. One afternoon, while gathering lemons for cordial, she sensed someone behind her. Her heart leapt. David stood there, in the shade of a towering apple tree, watching. He didn't approach, just looked with that intensity that both disturbed and drew her in. He wore an open linen shirt, chest bronzed by the sun. His leather boots soft on the earth. There was something in his gaze that said despite everything, he felt no regret, and the scariest or most thrilling thing was that neither did she. Days passed. The routine was a sham. She helped her mother with chores, but the gulf between them widened. Sometimes, she found Margaret staring out the window, face etched with deep pain, and hated herself for causing such suffering. The tension was palpable. A knot in her stomach that stole her breath. One stormy night, the rain pounded the manor's roof like a drum. Margaret had retired early, complaining of a headache. Emily couldn't sleep. The wind howled like a mournful spirit. Thunder shook the old stone walls. She went to the sitting room for a book and found David there, wrapped in a blanket, sitting near the cold fireplace. Moonlight through the window bathed him in silver. Her footsteps were hushed on the wooden floor. He looked up, eyes shining with familiar intensity. He folded back the blanket and placed it carefully aside. Without a word, he extended a hand. An unspoken invitation. Emily's hands trembled, but this time excitement outweighed fear. She sat at his feet, feeling the cold floor. Beneath her slippers with deliberate slowness, he placed his hand on her hair, stroking her nape gently. His fingers traced down her back, along the cotton fabric of her pajamas. The contact sparked electricity through every nerve. He asked her to meet his gaze, and in his eyes, she read a story just theirs. A secret binding them in darkness. Suddenly, a sound. Not thunder or rain, but the creak of her mother's bedroom door opening. Her heart skipped. David heard it too. His eyes widened. His hand stilled. Time froze without words. They knew what the sound meant. With surprising agility, he stood. She rose, body rigid with tension. They exchanged a look as dawn's pale light crept through the windows, revealing traces of the night. There was no time to run or hide. Fate was sealed. And then she appeared, Margaret, her slender figure framed in the sitting room doorway. Dressed in a silk ivory robe, Emily had embroidered herself with hummingbird motifs. Her usually impeccable braid was undone, hair falling wild over her shoulders. But it was her face that froze. Emily's blood, paler than ever, eyes swollen and red, reflecting a pain so profound it shattered her heart. And no anger.
No disbelief.
Only endless sadness, overwhelming resignation. That I in her right hand. She clutched the small mother-of-pearl rosary her grandmother had given her, fingers gripping so tightly the knuckles turned white. The silence that followed was the heaviest Emily had ever known, a silence that spoke volumes, screaming truths they tried to silence. Margaret said nothing, just looked at David and Emily. With all the scene before her, Emily, in rumpled pajamas, hair tousled by passion. David, still bearing the trace of their intimacy in his expression. Her eyes moved between them, and in that look, Emily felt the weight of a shattered heart. Margaret's gaze dropped to the rosary. Lips trembled. A single tear traced a bright path down her cheek. A tear of betrayal, disillusionment, a love crumbling before her eyes. Slowly, she turned, each step seeming to carry a ton's weight. Without looking back, she headed to the front door. Mom, Emily whispered, voice broken. But Margaret did not stop. The lock clicked, footsteps fading into the distance. The last echo of her departure. She was gone, and with her went the last shred of hope to heal the irreparable. Their family lay shattered beyond repair. The structure once thought solid, the life they'd built, had collapsed without remedy. Margaret no longer spoke to Emily. Her absence was an ever-present ghost haunting her. Guilt consumed Emily utterly. Every cell screamed under the weight of her betrayal. The pain she carried was unbearable, but so was the growing gulf between them. Each day, her world felt smaller, darker, as if a thick fog enveloped her, trapping her in an endless spiral. Every attempt to fix things revealed no easy answers, no shortcuts, no magic cure. Pieces were broken, fragmented, and she didn't know if they could ever be fit back together. David and Emily remained in the silence of the sitting room, dawn casting gray shadows on the walls. The intimacy of night was gone, replaced by harsh reality. A question hung in the air, unanswered. Was it desire that bound them, or fate that condemned them? Could something new, something different, rise from these ashes? Or were they doomed to carry the weight of their own mistakes, shadows of the irreparable, forever chasing them? She didn't know. All she knew was that in this moment, she felt like a ship adrift on a stormy sea, with no compass and no harbor in sight. What would become of them now? What would become of her? The days that followed dragged on with the sluggish heaviness of molasses. Emily wandered through the ancient manor like a ghost herself, moving from room to room with a hollow ache nestled deep in her chest. The manor's once comforting creaks and groans now sounded like whispered accusations. The sunlight that filtered through the tall sash windows no longer warmed her skin but spotlighted every crack in the fractured family. The scent of lavender incense lingered faintly in the air, a haunting reminder of happier times when the house was filled with laughter and music. Margaret's absence was a void that filled every corner. She had taken refuge at a friend's cottage in the nearby village of Mortonhampstead, ostensibly to gather her thoughts, but Emily knew the truth. She was running from the unbearable reality that had fractured their lives. Phone calls went unanswered. Letters remained unopened. Each unanswered attempt stung more than the last, leaving Emily feeling smaller, more lost. David was equally elusive. His workshop, once a bustling sanctuary of wood shavings and plans, sat silent and forlorn. The truck was gone from the gravel drive, and wherever he had gone, he had taken with him the warmth and certainty that used to fill the manor's halls. Emily's attempts to reach him were met with cold distance or silence, deepening the chasm of loneliness. One afternoon, Emily found herself in the overgrown orchard, the trees heavy with ripening apples. The air was thick with the scent of earth and fruit, but beneath it all was a tension she couldn't shake. She picked a fallen apple, its skin dappled and bruised, and turned it over in her hands as if searching for answers in its mottled surface. Her thoughts drifted to Jamie, the baker's boy, who had been a constant in the background of her life for so long. His shy smiles and gentle manner were a stark contrast to the turmoil that consumed her now. She wondered if he suspected anything, if he understood the storm swirling inside her. She imagined him standing behind the counter of his little shop, flour dusting his hair, and felt a pang of longing for simpler days as she sat beneath the gnarled branches. Emily's phone buzzed in her pocket. She hesitated, heart pounding, before pulling it out. The screen displayed a message from an unknown number. "I know what happened. Meet me at the Fox and Hounds tonight." Alone. A chill ran down her spine. The Fox and Hounds was the village pub, a cozy spot with low beams and a roaring fire. It was the kind of place where secrets were shared over pints of cider, and gossip flowed as freely as the ale. But who could this be? And what did they know? That evening, after a restless day spent avoiding the manor's suffocating silence, Emily dressed carefully. She chose a deep emerald dress that hugged her slender frame, the fabric soft and flowing, with a modest slit that hinted at the curve of her leg. Her hair was loosely curled, pinned back on one side with a delicate silver clip shaped like a leaf. She slipped on black suede ankle boots that clicked softly on the cobbled streets as she made her way to the pub. The Fox and Hounds was warm and inviting, a stark contrast to the cold storm inside her. The scent of roasting meat and spilled ale mingled with the murmurs of patrons tucked into dark corners. Emily scanned the room nervously, her fingers trembling around the rim of her glass. Then she saw him. A man sat alone at a table near the fireplace, his face partially shadowed. His eyes, sharp and knowing, locked onto hers immediately. He was tall, with a lean build and dark hair streaked with silver at the temples. His tweed jacket was worn but well kept, hinting at old-world charm with a dash of mystery. "Emily," he said, his voice low but steady. "I've been expecting you." She swallowed hard, pulling a chair out and sitting opposite him. "Who are you?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "My name is Charles," he replied, a faint smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "I'm someone who knows the truth about your family, and about David." Emily's heart skipped. "What truth? What do you mean?" Charles leaned in, lowering his voice even further. "There's more to David than you realize. He's not just your mother's husband. He's been hiding from something, or someone. And your arrival here this summer wasn't as accidental as you think." Emily's mind reeled. She had always sensed there was something unspoken beneath David's solemn exterior. But this? It was too much. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked, suspicion creeping into her tone. "Because," Charles said, "you're the only one who can stop what's coming next. The past is catching up, and if you don't act, it could destroy everything." The fire crackled, casting shadows that danced over Charles's face. Emily felt as if she had stepped into a novel, one where the lines between friend and foe blurred, and secrets hid in every corner. "Stop what?" she pressed, needing answers but afraid of what they might be. Charles reached into his jacket and pulled out a faded photograph. It showed a younger David, standing beside a man Emily didn't recognize. Behind them, a factory loomed, smoke billowing from its chimneys. "This," Charles said, "is the key. David's past is tangled with dangerous people in London. People who don't forget, and don't forgive." Emily's breath caught. She had never thought of David as anything but a quiet, steady presence. Now the ground beneath her seemed to shift. "Why me?" she asked again. "Because you're part of this now, whether you like it or not." Outside, the wind howled, rattling the window panes. Emily glanced toward the door, half expecting someone or something to burst in. Her life, she realized, was about to become a very different story, and somewhere, deep within the shadows of the manor, a secret waited. One that could either save them all or shatter everything irreparably. The question wasn't whether Emily was ready. It was whether she could afford not to be. Emily left the Fox and Hounds with a restless mind, the weight of Charles's words pressing heavily upon her. The moon hung low over the quiet village, casting long shadows that twisted and stretched like dark fingers reaching after her. The cobbled streets, bathed in silver light, felt strangely unfamiliar, as if the place she had known all her life had suddenly become a stage for secrets and shadows. Her emerald dress swirled around her knees as she hurried back toward the manor, the soft thud of her suede boots the only sound breaking the night's hush. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and blooming honeysuckle, but Emily barely noticed. Her thoughts were a tangle of confusion, fear, and something deeper. A spark of resolve she hadn't expected to find. Crossing the threshold of the manor, she paused, the familiar creak of the heavy oak door echoing in the silent hallway. The house felt emptier than ever, the shadows deeper, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. She moved toward the sitting room where the fire had long since died, and the familiar scent of cedarwood and old books filled the air, mingling with a faint trace of David's cologne. Emily's fingers brushed over the worn leather armchair where David had sat during that fateful night, the memory of his touch still vivid in her mind. She shivered, the sensation both thrilling and terrifying. Was he truly gone? Or was he lurking somewhere within these walls, trapped in the same web of secrets and lies? Suddenly, a sharp knock at the study door startled her. She hesitated, heart pounding, before pushing it open slowly. The room was dim, lit only by the pale glow of the moon filtering through the curtains. On the desk lay a leather-bound journal. Its pages yellowed and worn. Curiosity overcame her caution. She stepped inside and picked up the journal, running her fingers over the embossed initials. Deitch, David Harrison. It was his handwriting scrawled across the first page. Her breath caught as she began to read. The journal was a tapestry of confessions and memories, a hidden ledger of a life double living between the quiet Devonshire manor and a shadowy past in London's underbelly. David wrote of a secret he had buried under layers of silence. Involvement with a clandestine group tied to industrial espionage, a betrayal that had forced him to flee and assume a new identity. Emily's eyes widened with each word. The man she had known, the steady, serious figure of her childhood, was a stranger in his own story. Each page revealed a fragment of a dangerous game played in smoke-filled rooms and back alleys, where loyalty was currency and trust a rare commodity. One passage struck her hardest. Asterisk, I never meant to bring this darkness to Emily's world. Protecting her has been my only truth. But the past does not forgive, and the shadows stretch long. If they find us here, all will be lost. Asterisk, a sudden noise shattered the silence. A muffled thud followed by hurried footsteps echoing down the corridor. Emily's heart leapt. She snapped the journal shut and hid it beneath her dress just as the door burst open. David stood there, eyes dark and unreadable, a mix of exhaustion and urgency etched across his face. "Emily," he said, voice low but commanding. "You shouldn't be here. I had to know," she replied, voice trembling but firm. "Why didn't you tell me? Why did you keep all this hidden?" He ran a hand through his tousled hair and looked away. "I wanted to protect you. From everything. From me." She stepped closer, her gaze never wavering. "But secrets have a way of unraveling. Now that I know, what happens next?" David's jaw tightened. "They're coming. The ones I betrayed. They won't stop until they get what they want." Emily swallowed hard. "Then we have to be ready." A tense silence settled between them, broken only by the distant hoot of an owl. David's expression softened slightly, and for a fleeting moment, the man beneath the walls of secrets emerged. "Emily, I'm sorry for everything. I never meant to drag you into this." She shook her head, determination blazing in her eyes. "We're in this together now. No more running." Outside, the wind whipped through the trees, scattering dead leaves like whispers. Somewhere beyond the manor's grounds, a shadow moved, watching, waiting, and in the heart of the night, the past and present collided, setting a course that would change everything. But one question remained, hanging in the air like a challenge. Who could they trust when the enemy was closer than they thought? The answer lay hidden in the manor's depths, in secrets yet to be uncovered, and in the fragile bond between a girl learning to face darkness and a man desperate to protect her from it.as. Emily closed the study door behind her. She knew the journey was only beginning. The storm was coming, and there was no turning back. The following morning dawned gray and heavy, with low-hanging clouds muffling the usual Devonshire sunlight. Emily awoke to the distant rumble of thunder, a storm gathering beyond the rolling hills, as if nature itself sensed the turmoil building inside the manor. She lay still for a moment, the leather-bound journal's weight against her side, a tangible reminder of the secrets now swirling through her life. Margaret had not returned, and the house remained oppressively quiet. Emily dressed quickly, opting for a soft gray sweater that hugged her slender frame and a pair of dark jeans, practical for whatever lay ahead. She tied her chestnut hair back loosely, strands escaping to frame her pale face, and slipped on worn leather boots, sturdy enough for the muddy paths surrounding the estate. Downstairs, the kitchen was cold and empty. A faint scent of spilled tea lingered, mingling with the ever-present aroma of damp wood and stone. Emily poured herself a cup, the warmth grounding her as she stared out the window at the orchard where apples hung heavy, their skins slick with rain. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the front door. Heart quickening, she crossed the hall and opened it cautiously. Standing there was Jamie, the baker's boy, his usually gentle eyes clouded with worry. He wore a thick jacket, rain droplets beating on the collar, and in his hands was a small parcel wrapped in brown paper. "Emily," he said softly, "I heard about what's been going on. Thought you might need this." She took the parcel, fingers trembling. "Thank you, Jamie. You shouldn't have come all this way." He shrugged, a faint smile flickering. "Sometimes you just have to show up." Inside, Emily unwrapped the parcel to find a leather-bound notebook, similar in style to David's journal. A folded note slipped from between the pages. Hands shaking, she unfolded it. Asterisk, if you're reading this, it means you're in deeper than you realize. Trust no one. Meet me at the old mill by dusk. Alone. Asterisk, her pulse quickened. The handwriting was unfamiliar, jagged and hurried. "Do you know who this is from?" she asked Jamie. He shook his head. "No idea. But the old mill isn't far, just past the village green. It's been abandoned for years. People say it's haunted." Emily smiled faintly despite herself. "Haunted? Huh? Maybe it's ghosts keeping secrets." Jamie chuckled, but the worry never left his eyes. "Be careful, Emily. You're not alone in this, you know." As dusk settled, casting a violet hue over the countryside, Emily found herself standing before the crumbling facade of the old mill. Its red bricks were cracked and weathered, ivy clawing at the walls like desperate fingers. The wooden door hung ajar, creaking softly in the rising wind. She stepped inside. the air thick with dust and the faint scent of mold. Shadows stretched long across broken machinery and shattered windows. Where the last slivers of daylight fought to penetrate the gloom, a figure emerged from the darkness. Tall and slender, cloaked in a charcoal gray coat. The stranger's face was obscured beneath a wide-brimmed hat, but the eyes that met Emily's were sharp and calculating. "You came," the voice said, low and smooth, with a hint of amusement. "Who are you?" Emily demanded, trying to steady her breath. "A friend. Or perhaps a foe," the figure replied enigmatically. "But in your world, those lines are blurred." Emily's fingers tightened around David's journal tucked beneath her coat. "What do you want from me?" The stranger smiled, a flash of white teeth in the dim light. "Answers. And perhaps a little help." Before Emily could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed outside. The stranger's eyes flicked toward the entrance, then back to her. "They're close," the voice warned. "Trust no one. Not even those you loved." A sudden crash shattered the distant silence, the manor's heavy front door slamming shut. Emily's heart leapt. "Who's coming?" she asked, panic rising. The stranger's smile faded. "The past. And it's hungry." Emily glanced toward the broken windows as the last rays of light faded, darkness swallowing the mill hole. Her hand brushed the leather-bound journal against her chest, the pages whispering secrets she was only beginning to understand, and somewhere, deep within the shadows, a silent watcher smiled. Because in this game of shadows and secrets, the greatest danger was yet to come. The question wasn't just who to trust, but how to survive when everyone was a stranger. And as the storm finally broke outside, rain hammering the earth like a warning drum, Emily realized one thing with chilling clarity. The night was far from over. The rain lashed down in sheets, drumming relentlessly on the weather-beaten roof of the old mill. Inside, Emily's breath came in shallow bursts, the cold damp pressing against her skin like a second layer. The stranger's warning echoed in her mind. Trust no one, not even those you love. It was a terrifying thought, twisting itself like a knot deep in her gut. The mysterious figure stepped closer, the brim of their hat casting a shadow over their face. Emily's eyes darted to the journal tucked beneath her coat, a fragile lifeline in a sea of uncertainty. "Who are you?" she demanded again, voice firmer despite the fear clawing at her throat. The figure lowered the hat slowly, revealing sharp features framed by dark, streaked hair. A woman's face, pale and determined, with eyes that held a glimmer of both sadness and steel. "My name is Evelyn," she said softly. "I knew your father, David, before he disappeared. We were part of something far bigger than this sleepy manor or your quiet village." Emily's heart skipped. "You knew him? Then why didn't he tell me? Why keep me in the dark?" Evelyn's gaze faltered. "He was protecting you. But the truth is dangerous. The people chasing him, they don't care who gets hurt." A sudden noise, footsteps crunching on the gravel outside, made both women tense. Emily's fingers clenched the journal tighter. The rain's steady patter was suddenly drowned out by the sharp click of a gun being cocked. "Show yourselves," a voice barked from the doorway. Evelyn moved swiftly, grabbing Emily's hand. "This way." They slipped through a side exit, the cold night air biting at their faces as they plunged into the thick woods bordering the mill. The rain soaked through Emily's coat, but adrenaline drowned out the chill. Branches whipped at their faces. Roots threatened to trip them as they ran, heartbeats pounding in sync with the storm. Behind them, shouts and heavy footsteps pursued, voices harsh and urgent. "Faster," Evelyn urged. Her grip firm but gentle. Emily's lungs burned, but she pushed on, driven by a mixture of fear and fierce determination. After what felt like an eternity, they stumbled into a small clearing where a battered Land Rover waited, headlights off, engine idling. Evelyn helped Emily inside and slammed the door. The vehicle lurched forward, gravel crunching beneath the tires as they sped into the darkness. Inside, the storm's fury was muffled, but Emily's mind raced. Questions tumbled over each other. Who were these people hunting David? What secret had he been guarding? And why was she now at the center of it all? Evelyn glanced at her, eyes sharp. "You need to understand, Emily. Your father's past isn't just about mistakes or betrayal. It's about a choice. One that saved lives but damned others. Emily swallowed hard. What choice? Before Evelyn could answer, the radio crackled to life, a voice distorted and urgent breaking through the static. We've got company near the manor. Suspects spotted heading your way. Evelyn's jaw clenched. They're closing in faster than we thought. Emily's gaze locked with hers. Then what now? Evelyn reached into her coat pocket, producing a small, weathered key. We need to get to the safe house. There you'll find answers and safety. But it won't be easy as the Land Rover roared into the night, rain blurring the world into streaks of gray. Emily realized the life she'd known was gone. The quiet Devonshire manor, the simple days with Jamie and her mother. All replaced by shadows, secrets, and a deadly chase. Yet beneath the fear, a spark ignited. A fierce hope that maybe, just maybe, she could rewrite the story. Not just for herself, but for the family fractured by lies and silence. The road ahead was dark and uncertain, but Emily was no longer running from the past. She was racing toward it, and somewhere in the storm, a whisper lingered. A promise, a warning, a challenge. The truth would come at a price, and the question was Emily ready to pay it?